And welcome, number 239, I do believe, this week. 239. 239 of these. How many years is that? Let's see, there's 52 weeks in a year. So we're going on 5 years. That's crazy. That's wild. Somebody do the math. What's 52 times 5? When will I be at 5 years of shows? I have to do a special one for that. It's always fun though. I'm glad to be here. I look forward to it every week. What happened this week? I did a video for the KSR preamp pedal and put that out. And that was an impressive piece of gear. His amps must sound good because that pedal sounds really good. I'm seeing, a lot of these types of products, the pedal board based pre's that kind of take the place of an amp. So I was having a little talk about this with Friedman, actually. What do you guys think, just in your opinion, what's my question? What would the majority of you want? Like a preamp on a pedal board that you would then run into a guitar, like a power amp and a guitar cabinet on stage, or the effects return of an amp on that kind of thing, so that you're powering a guitar cabinet on stage? Or if you're doing a preamp on a pedal board, is it mainly a direct thing that you want to run to a PA for, like, if you're doing a cover gig or a church gig or some kind of gig, whatever, fly gig, you're on in-ears, you don't need a cab on stage? Or is it both? As little I just want people's opinions on that. What most people are, I sense there's going to be a different answer from a lot, like it's going to be a 50-50 kind of thing, but I'm just curious what you guys think. So both, says Tom. Mr. Jake says beaten to death already. I'm not sure if you're talking about that or not, but we've got Laurent here from France. Hi, I miss France. Man, I had fun over there last month. It was so nice. Greetings from the Netherlands, says Johan. Is that how you say your name? I love that place too. I do, man. Paul's talking about Full Tone closing shop. That is happening, I think. Yeah. We got Jay Blues Guitar. He from UK. Fareed's here. And it's good to see all you guys. Yeah, 260 shows. That'll be 5 years of shows. So I'll have to do something special for that. Still got a ways to go before then. A few months off. But anyways, yeah. Paul says, I love the Inca Silver. I think you're talking about the picture in the thumbnail, right? God, I had the hardest time. Part of what was delaying me this morning was the thumbnail. The way I make a thumbnail for it's I'm not going to bore you with that, but it's an app. And I couldn't do the borders right. It kept showing up. So there was a black line around it was like, this is insane. It took me like 10 or 15 minutes to make a thumbnail this morning, which it normally doesn't. And that delayed my start. I should just do it the day before, but I was yesterday was a busy day, so I couldn't. Anyways, enough on that. Let's see. Paul says he wants a soul bender and treble booster before he closes. That's Mr. Full Tone. Yeah. I've got that rack chorus here. I'll always keep that. It's a really nice, tri-chorus rack mount, true tri-chorus box that sounds beautiful. So he made some great sounding pedals. There's absolutely no doubt, great sounding gear. Josh from JHS says that the boutique pedal thing is over, says Paul. Really? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of pedals, obviously, like, believe me. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of pedals, but when people put out a good one, it still resonates. It's like a hit song, it's like there's a lot of music that comes out, but the one that clicks and goes is that's a thing. And there's still some occasionally something that comes out that seems to really resonate with people, and do well pedal wise. So I was talking about this years ago with Keeley, and he was talking about how he thinks sort of every pedal's been created, but now his thing is to combine them and put different effects in the same box together, so useful. And I think that, you know, you'll see that with his, like, kind of his Hendrix boxes where there's kind of an Octavia and a fuzz and univibe and everything all in one pedal. So that's neat. You know, I mean, I don't know. I still think there's things to be made, I guess. I loved the Freak Out when it came out because it was so different, you know, way to get feedback. You know, even when you're not using an amp in the same room, a way to simulate feedback. And that really, I saw, you know, I turned a number of you know, well-known guitar players onto that pedal. I was like, look at this thing, look how amazing this is. And they were like, oh, I have to have that, you know, because that's just so useful, like in a studio environment or something where you want controlled feedback. So that was something that came out of the blue, you know, that but yeah, there's a lot of pedals. There is. I mean, there's no doubt about it, you know. It's hard. I think about it sometimes, like, how do these companies, you know, they'll put something out and there might be an initial sales run, and then it's like, how do they keep it going? You know, it's got to be expensive to make, you know. Anyways, I digress. Okay. Robert says, I'm running a Moore preamp Model X into my Princeton and can get so many amp sounds. So that's interesting. So you go into an amp with it. Yeah, that's cool. Just looking at some other your comments here to see what you guys are talking about with. I want to get back to the preamp thing for a minute because I am interested. Mark says, I'm interested in if you've got a preamp, you know, like the KSR style 3-channel, so like it replaces the front end of an amp. Basically, there's a couple different ways you can go. You can either run a pedal like that into a power amp and a cabinet, or you can run it into a PA or your recording interface and go direct and record with it, kind of as a silent solution. Or you can do both. So what do you guys think? Everybody's saying both. I kind of agree. I mean, I think both. Yeah, Mark says both. So, and I'm seeing, you know, a few different people say. Here's another Mark that also says both. Yeah, I like both. Yeah. I like all-in-one. Pedal direct to PA. There's one. Tom says both. Oh, I guess Mr. Jake, when he said boutique, I think you're saying boutique has been beaten to death already because you guys are talking about that and what Josh said. So, yeah, it could be. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Have you seen the new Black Star? Is that how it's spelled? You know, actually, I'm making a video for that. I thought it was amped one, but maybe it's amid one. I'm not sure. Bruce is asking about this Black Star. It's an amp style pedal with a DI out and a 100-watt power amp and all that Class D. And I've still got the TX Watt one to do here. I've got the Dumble Pre to do here. I've got the Carl Martin Ampster right here that I started making a video for. All these different, you know, preamp on pedalboard sort of devices. So it's interesting. Any chance you tried the IK multimedia thing? I saw a video for that this week that Michael Nielsen did that sounded really good. So this is like Shahar's question is about IK Multimedia has a software now where you can basically do the Kemper profiling thing or the quad cortex, you know, capture thing just with your computer and a recording interface. You can capture your amps into a plugin and then use them within, you know, Pro Tools or Logic or anything like that. Sounded really good in the video that I saw, and I actually sent them. They did send me an email that I missed because I'm dumb, and they asked me about it a couple months ago. So I finally wrote them back and said, I'm sorry I missed this email, but I'd love to check it out and maybe make a video or something. So maybe that'll happen. It did sound really good though, and Michael's video kind of tells the story, I think, anyway. So yeah, Peter Lacey says, if you're on in-ears or working with a singer-songwriter, no cab on stage, direct to PA really helps. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely done it, you know, both ways. I've had the cab on stage or gone direct, or sometimes both at the same time. Like the last tour I did, I was doing both at the same time. So, Edbert says this is an interesting point about devices like this. Your composition for KS, it's KSR, right? Not KSL, but great. Thank you. That's the 3-channel pre I just did. I'd rather the IRs be built in. That would be great. it is a whole thing that maybe he just, when you're a smaller company and you can make analog circuits and things, that's great. But combining IRs means now you got to source an IR board, and analog to digital converter and all this stuff. And it is if you're a company that just makes amps and pedals all kind of in the analog world, it's a whole, because we did it with the PT15. Believe me, there's a whole level of headache there. I'm glad we did it, but it took a lot of development and time and stuff. And so I'm sure that's why he didn't, this Carl Martin Ampster, this doesn't have, I don't know if anybody out there realizes this, because I really didn't, but Carl Martin doesn't do digital anything. All their pedals are analog. So that's why even the reverb is a spring reverb. They just don't do digital. And, doing digital is, as long as you got somebody working for your company that can do it and stuff, that's great. And if you can source the stuff you need, the chips and stuff, that's great. But if you don't, it's a whole thing that you kind of have to gear up to make anything digital. That's like a different skill set and stuff, And so it's kind of, it's a whole deal. Before we did the PT15, Sir had the Ace analog cabinet emulator little box, which sounds great. And I helped them develop that and stuff. But I'll take some credit for sure for steering them in the direction of digital and getting, the reactive load IR and to source the chip and figure out how to at least, do some basic digital so that we could do this stuff. I pushed them in that direction. And so I saw the amount of, it took some work and some development. Without Kevin, Sir, it wouldn't have happened, because he's real bright and he, is, he's younger and forward thinking and stuff. He just kind of tackles that stuff and figures out things, in the digital realm, and that he's got an interest in it. So that was a good collaboration, and it helped to get those products done. PT15 IR, reactive load IR, and get them into the digital land a little bit. So, okay, there's a super chat there from Ian. I usually watch while folding the laundry. Perfect. I wish I could do that. I wish I could fold laundry and do the show at the same time. Maybe I should do that. And I actually did a bunch of housework yesterday. I stayed home. I've been feeling guilty because I'm part owner of a cat. That just sort of happened. And so I feel bad because I come here all day and I leave him and he's gone all, at home alone all day. And I felt terrible about it all week because I go for kind of a long time and then I come back and I feel like he's going bonkers a little bit. So yesterday I tried to spend almost all day at home with him and just kind of play around with him. Do the laundry and all that kind of stuff. So I was thinking maybe I should just bring him here. Maybe I'll bring him on Sundays and let him run around in here while I do the show. I got to get a litter box here, there and stuff. And he'll probably start whining and complaining and it'll be like a whole problem. But he's a great guy. I love him. Anyways, so always appreciate your knowledge and candor, says Ian. Thank you, man. Thanks for being Pete. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks you guys for showing up and hanging every Sunday with me. Stealth Parrot says it's called the Amped One. Yeah, so I have one here, the Black Star, and I opened it up yesterday, and it looks really cool. I also have some API pedals here. They haven't officially sort of contracted me or anything to make a video for them, but I'm going to check them out. They look pretty neat. I mean, API is like my favorite mic pre's and stuff. Let's show them, shall we? I've got a few different ones here. There's a bass one, a compressor, and here's one called the Transformer tone pedal. There it is. Cool, right? Little API. It looks like it's got an overdrive in it and then a simple EQ. I can't read the small print right now on the box, but I think that's what's going on. Guitar tone pedal. So they just sent them to me to check out. I'll plug them in and see. Probably going to sound really cool. It's API. Good stuff. Oh, I have the amp sitting here. There it is. So this is the Black Star preamp. And it's got a whole IR thing. They've got their own IR circuitry. I did a video for a similar pedal from them that I guess is still kind of technically an overdrive, but has IR capability in it. I think this one's a little more full fleshed out with a power amp and everything. It's got a 100-watt Class D power amp and that kind of thing in it. So yeah, I'll be making videos for as soon as I can do all this stuff. Do I sound exhausted? I'm a little exhausted today. I didn't sleep that great last night. I'm trying to sleep really good tonight. Sleep in a little bit tomorrow. Hang out with the cat again. That's what I'm going to do. Everybody's exhausted. I was doing a rehearsal the other day, and my friend that I was playing guitar with, he looked so tired. He was just like, he's been burning the candle both ends, touring, and he plays on TV and does all kinds of stuff. And he looked really tired the other day. I felt bad for him. Like, we all need to slow down a little bit, get some more rest, I think. Anyways, let's see. Laurent's mentioning blue guitar. Yeah, that's another one. Of course, he's got a Thomas Blue. He's got a pedal, one of the first, really. He's a bit of a pioneer, I would say, doing that for sure. And a really nice guy, great guitar player, with his blue guitar, IR pedal as well as his preamp, and it's actually an amp, with a built-in. It's 4 channels, isn't it? It's like he did that 10 years ago. Yeah. So. Hip Metalwork says, I've heard a few demos of it. Sounds pretty good for what it is. They still sound a bit artificial. Is that the Black Star that you're talking about? I just wonder. Hip Metalworks. I'll have to take a listen to it. These things are so dependent on the IRs that, like the tone of a pedal like that, or anything, you can definitely alter them massively with the impulse response that you choose. That's the biggest thing. It's this overall massive EQ on the whole thing. So you can modify the sound, for sure. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. There's Lauren. Sorry, I didn't get back to you yesterday there, my friend, about the I know I got to do that. Let's make that happen this week. I'm getting him a power conditioner that I'm not using anymore. We'll make that happen. Sorry, Canadian. Let's see. Mr. Hernandez here says he's got to go. Don't go. Stay. I understand if you got to go. All good. Next week, Pete's amp will be replaced by washer and dryer. Actually, there's only one amp here this week. I've usually got 3 or 4 stacks up here, but I had to take my head because I'm playing a gig tonight. So I took my PT 100 out and had to put all the other amps on the floor for a minute that are usually here. So I started a video yesterday for a fuzz that's coming out soon, and I used the Hedgehog here, which is a great. You can't see it really because it's so damn dark in here the way that I've got it all set up, but there it is. Can you see it? No. Turn on the light on my phone. Try and light it. It's sitting right there. The Sir Hedgehog amp, and it's a terrific sounding amp that I just haven't been using enough. But I was talking to John about it. It's a little more dumble, the Hedgehog. Anybody out there try a Sir Hedgehog before? It's got a real dumbly thing that with all the switches on the front. Comes with a I wish you could see it. You can't see it that well. It's sitting over here right now. But I would pick it up, but it weighs a lot. Anyway, series of switches on the front for boost, bright, mid, deep, switching in and out the effect loop, and then the overdrive circuit. And it's a Dumbley series effects loop, or Dumbley series overdrive, I should say, where you're adding an overdrive circuit to the core amp sound. It's not like a 2-channel amp. When you turn on the overdrive, you're actually hitting the, it's in the circuit, and it's got that Dumble thing. But it feels really good to me. It's such a different sound for me because I'm usually the Marshall guy with overdrive, but when I play that, it's a nice smoother overdrive without as much fizz and has this fatness to every note. And it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. Ian Thornley makes it sound great. If you want to hear the Hedgehog used to maximum effectiveness, listen to the Andertons video with Ian Thornley. He's playing through one and he kills on it. It sounds amazing. So that's the vibe right there of that amp. An underrated amp for sure. What's the Bumblebee guitar? That's a EVH. Just kind of a standard, how they do the I've got this killer strap for it from the Fairfield Guitar Company. Let's give him a shout out. He makes these repro straps that are like what Eddie used, so the strap is just like what Ed had on his Bumblebee. But yeah, no, it's a Fairfield Guitar Company, and see it's a 79B on the tag. It's a really cool strap. But yeah, it's not an exact reproduction, this one. It's close, but it's such a cool guitar, They're just the vibe. they're fun, you know. Just to, if you're playing anything Van Halen 2, rock it out. I'd never liked the B, you know, and there's only one video, and I found it the other day of him playing it that people know about. One video of him actually playing it live. Isn't that amazing? There's no other footage of him using that guitar live. It sounded great when I heard it. I think they were playing. Actually, I don't remember what they were playing. I thought it was Somebody Get Me a Doctor, but no, maybe that wasn't it. But anyway, using the Bumblebee. Yeah, you see photos of him using it, but nobody got any video somehow. It's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what he didn't like about it. I do remember when they came out with the reproduction, the exact one a few years ago. I texted him about it and spoke to him via text about it. I go, dude, that guitar looks badass, the new whatever, and he's like, yeah, finally I've got one that sounds good, so he did say that. And of course, famously, the original got buried with Dime, which is just when he passed away. So that's just crazy. Ed showed up with that because I think he knew that Dime always really liked that. Daryl, really liked that guitar, and so that's heavy. He just showed up with it at his service, and it's an amazing story. But anyways, so he said, yeah, I finally got one that sounds good, and so I guess maybe it was the tone that he just never bonded with, but kind of interesting. Let's see, Lawrence's birthday. What's up, man? Hey, happy birthday. How are you? I just missed a super chat, but I'll grab it. I'll get it here in a sec. Happy birthday, man. Hope you're well. Let's see. You're one of the most underrated players. Thanks, man. I still feel like I'm learning is the thing. All the time. I feel like a student, man. Like I'm just getting started. I really feel like that about guitar. So I appreciate it. And there's one. The Proton 45. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you. Any idea when your new signatures will be shipping? The best people to ask are the dealers, because when they order them, they get a it'll be different for because somebody could have ordered one yesterday from a dealer, like a dealer could have ordered one, and then somebody could have ordered one back a few months ago when they first came out. So the dealers will know, like, this guitar is going to basically arrive at da date, So that's the best I can do for that. So, I hope soon. I try and not bother those guys. They're always. It seems like it's a quality problem, but they're even with it's like tough economic times right now for people and stuff, and they still are like behind on making guitars. They're still they're back ordered because there's that much demand. So I try and just not. I don't know, it doesn't help if I hit them up and I'm like, hey, when are the guitars going to be? It's just more stress for them. So I wish I knew too exactly. I'm sure relatively soon here there'll be the first orders. They'll be getting some done and sent out. So yeah, let's see. Could you please describe a true wet, dry, wet setup? That's a good question from Chris. Well, the thing about it, Chris, is that there's a few different ways to do it. There's the main two ways I would say are, let's talk about the studio style way first. This was guys like Landau, John Shanks does this. In the recording studio, you'll mic up an amp in a cabinet, and then the sound comes into the recording console, and then to get effects, you can send on the console, right? You take the send knob, you send, it'll go out to like a rack effect or something. This is like the traditional studio. Go out to an effect, H3000 or a PCM 42 or whatever, and it'll hit that thing, and that effect will come back into a couple other channels on the console, and then you can just pull up those returns, and then you hear the sound of the effect blended with the mic cap. Well, that's essentially wet, dry, wet. It's just that that's the recording studio version. So to mimic that live, what people would do is mic a cabinet, and then go into a mic pre, and you see Landau's rack or whatever, you have like an API mic pre in there, and then you'll take the signal out of that pre and run into a rack, like a mixer. Rain made them, Ashley, I think some other companies would make these kind of line mixers in a rack. And then, you got your mic'd signal there. So literally like an SM57 on a cabinet, right? Going into an API mic pre or something, running into a mixer that's a one rack space. And then you could have sends on that channel, like up to 2 or 3 sends on some of these rack mixers, just like a big recording console. And you turn up that send, and then it'll come back into the returns of that line mixer. The line mixer will have a stereo output, and you take that stereo output and you can send that to the desk, send that to the recording desk or to a live desk, whatever you want. And that's one way to do wet, dry, wet. You could also take those wet outputs, and guys like, okay, Larry Carlton, I think Eric Johnson for a while, maybe. I know Larry Carlton did this for sure. A couple JBL full range monitors on stage for that wet signal, so that the sound would, you'd have your echo or your reverb or whatever, the wet stuff would be coming out of there while your dry sound was coming out of the dry guitar cabinet. You would set those effects 100% wet, so that there was no dry signal. So imagine a couple, like a guitar cabinet, guitar amp, and then you got a couple of like JBL full range PA speakers on stage with nothing but effects coming out of those speakers. So that's one way to do that. That's the kind of the studio style way of doing wet, dry, wet. Let's talk about now the more like the Steve Stevens, Eddie Van Halen, that style. That is where you've got your head going into a cabinet, and you take a tap off of the signal going from the head to the cabinet. So you can just use a little line out box that'll, rob some of the signal going to the speaker at line level, send that out to a rack. Okay. And you can have a mixer once again in the rack, and you've got that dry signal, but then you can also send out to some effects and go through those effects then into a power amp. H&H was a common one that you would see Van Halen use, or Steve Stevens. Then all that stuff goes into guitar cabinets. So out of the H&H into some, so you could have 3 412s, right? The center one would be dry. The 2 outside ones would have the effects in them on stage coming through the guitar speakers. So there's no mics involved or anything or a mic pre in this process. It's, not done that way. So and generally speaking, there will be dry mixed into those outside cabinets. So they're not pure wet cabinets. You'd blend some in. You can do that on the rack mixer, and this would be like a custom rack mixer. So I had a rig like that and used it for when I was playing with the latter half of playing with Chris Cornell, as well as Don Henley and Melissa Etheridge. I was using a wet, dry, wet rig just like that. For a while, I did 3 412s. It was insane. So then I went to a 412 and 2 112s with the wet stuff in them. And it was cool. 2 little cabinets on either side that would have the wet signal. But the only way to get that sound then into a PA or whatever is 3 mics. And there's other ways now, but you can use load boxes and stuff. But let's keep it simple. 3 mics is the way to do it. So when you see Eddie Van Halen, even on the last tour or, all the way basically, through the 90s and into 2000s and everything, if you saw Van Halen, you'd see a bunch of cabinets on stage, but you'd see 3 of them with mics. And those are those would be the live ones, right? The center one being the dry and the 2 outside ones. So you'd see 3 mics on 3 cabinets. The center one's the dry, the 2 outsides are the wet. And that's wet, dry, wet. Hopefully that explains. Oh, I think I already hit that one there. Thanks, Proton, for the super chat. I'm going to grab these other super chats here in a sec, but let's move on. Let's see. What do I think about the Boss Katana versus having a bunch of pedals? I like the Katana amps. Sir has one. He's a fan of them. He thinks they're really good for home practice and simple. They do sound good. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. This person, YMESYDT, says on 15 right now, moving back to LA and listening to you. Well, welcome back. Drive safe. And we'll see you here. Yeah. Okay. What else? Let's see. Can you explain the difference between 8 ohm and 16 ohm impedance? Well, practically speaking, I don't really think you're going to notice a difference in tone. Most Marshall cabinets are 16 ohm cabinets. Um, Different amps will have different impedance kind of schemes, and as far as their output transformers go and stuff. And I don't really understand why. Like I don't know why companies would do a 2 ohm over a 4 or an 8. Like for example, a lot of, well, not a lot, but some early Fenders, old Fenders, are 2 ohm output. It's kind of rare, but and then some are 4. Like my Basement is 4. So you're supposed to match that to the cabinet, right? To go backwards is bad. So let's say you had an 8 ohm amp and then your cabinet is 4 ohms. You'd probably be okay, but that backwards mismatch is not really desirable. So like a 4 ohm cabinet with an 8 ohm amp, not great. But the other way is okay, a one-way mismatch. So if you've got an 8 ohm amp going into a 16 ohm cabinet, let's say, that's okay. That upward mismatch to the cabinet is okay. You probably notice a little less headroom. That's what I notice. Sound might be a little brighter. It's supposedly Eddie Van Halen, when he used load resistor, always come back to Van Halen. He would set the amp on 8 ohms, and then he liked the 8 ohm with the 16 ohm cabinet, evidently. I think that's what I heard. And sometimes when he was using a load resistor, it'd be a 20 ohm load resistor. So, running an 8 ohm into a 20 ohm, it definitely seems to get a different sound. It's got a little more top end and a little more, distortion, I would say, because it's not as efficient, I don't think. So, yeah. So I noticed that when I run my 4 ohm Basement with an 8 ohm load, it seems to have a little less headroom and stuff. So, but it's not dangerous to go that way. As far as cabinets go, it's part of why Sir cabinets are almost all 8 ohms. John just figures then, you're good with most amps. Most amps will have a 4 and 8, and some of them a 16. So because only some of them have a 16 ohm tap, he figures like an 8 ohm cabinet's a good versatile, and I kind of agree with that. But most Marshall cabinets you'll find, especially vintage ones, are all 16 ohm, unless you rewire them with different speakers and stuff. So, and you gotta, it's down to the speakers that you've got in there. If you've got all 8 ohm speakers, you can have an 8 ohm 412. If you got 16 ohm speakers, you can have a 16 ohm 412, or you could wire it for 4 ohms. Some people might like that. I think I heard Eric Johnson like that. 16 or 4 different wiring schemes will, affect the impedance. So, yeah, it's interesting. I haven't messed around a lot with that. Like, can I hear a difference between if I've got an 8 ohm 412 with these speakers, and then if I've got a 16 ohm 412 with the exact same speakers, and if I set the amp at 8 or set the amp at 16 and go into each, does it sound any? I've never done that. There's a few things that I've never done, and that's one of them, because it just seems like, there's more stuff to worry about. So I'm not that picky, but I'm sure Eric Johnson's done it. I'm way back in the chat here, so I'm gonna hit these super chats and then move down, guys. If I could only have one, would you prefer stock plexi with a good boost drive, or a modern modded Marshall style amp? That's a great question. I don't know if I know the answer. I mean, my first inclination is, if I had to have one amp, I'm pretty good with the plexi, like with some pedals. Because that's my core, that's the sound where I feel most at home. That 68 plexi, the SL68 cranked up, or I love that sound so much. But there's, my PT100 is like, I could gig with that for the rest of my life and probably be fine with the clean channel and the 2 overdrive channels and stuff. So, it's a hard one to answer, to be honest. There's advantages to both. I just love the sound of a great, dialed in plexi. As far as like, if there's only one guitar tone, that would be it for me. You mentioned you record ideas on your phone, says Dan with the super chat. And by the way, thanks T-Top there for the super chat as well. So Dan now with the super chat. You mentioned you record ideas to your phone. How do you archive and retrieve the right idea amongst so many? Well, you can name them on the phone. So you can just name them. And generally speaking, I'll think about when I came up with it. For example, when I did my clinic, recording and production for the modern guitarist, I recorded an idea into the phone. and that was how the whole idea for the musical composition that I used in the clinic started. And then I would show that recording in the clinic where I was singing a guitar riff and drum beat into the phone. I would hold it up. So when I actually went to do the clinic, I was like, oh, that was a couple months ago or whatever. I got to go back and find it. And I quickly found it. It wasn't hard to track it down. I hadn't even named it. So, but the fact that you can name them in your phone with a, so I'll literally put a name like demo idea for new Boss pedal, or, new Boss demo, or whatever I'll name it, something like that. And then I can quickly kind of scroll, and there it is, So that's how I do it. Okay, here's two more. Guitars for your project. Says, I have a PT-15 and quad cortex. My front of house guy liked the PT-15 better. If I were to profile the PT-15, should I do it directly out of the amp or mic it? I've done this, and I did both, but the one that I end up using, and then I used on the Classic Rock Show gig that I just did in Malta, that was some PT-15 profiles of the direct amp. So no cabinet involved. And then I would add generally speaking, the 90s Greenback 412 in the quad cortex. I love that cab sim in the quad. It sounds really good to me. So I used that to the PA, and everybody seemed happy. But your mileage may vary. The beauty of doing just the amp is that you can then use the 4 outputs on the quad cortex to send a stereo line to the PA, and also another 2 outs to send to a power amp and cabinets on stage. So that's kind of why, if you bake in a cabinet into the sound, you're then painting yourself into the only direct output kind of corner. I mean, you could run into a power amp and cabs, but you're going to be getting that double speaker cabinet effect, right? So I figured just do the head. It's easier anyway to just do the amp using a reactive load, and then you can add a cabinet and power amp on stage. Add speaker sim in the box. Send that out to the PA. You get the best of both worlds. Then it's most versatile. Proton with a super chat there. I got a 72 Marshall 1987. That's what I have too, with the yellow Phillips Chiclet capacitors. Are you aware of a sonic difference as opposed to mustards? That's a good question for Friedman. I don't think there's anything wrong with the different ones. He would be able to tell you. I mean, he's kind of a proponent of like, I think most guys will tell you that different caps can sound a little different and what their favorites are. I know he doesn't. I like Sir thinks that Mallory's sound pretty good. As a replacement for old mustards. The yellow Chiclet ones, you see them in a lot of old. I mean, it's kind of better to take each amp as they come, I think, and then decide if you like the sound or if you don't, rather than go, well, I'm going to recap the whole thing with mustards and hope that it's a tonal improvement. If you basically like the way it sounds, but you want it a little warmer or a little something or other, you can probably just change like one cap or something and maybe get there. So I've got those. I've got some mustards and some of those, I think, in my amp that's up there that you see. That's a 72 as well. So right on, 72 Marshall Brothers. Yeah. And that's the other thing, is finding those caps, like whether you can even find old ones. I think the newer Synergy that are kind of designed to be like them are supposed to be pretty good. Those caps, yeah. Okay, let's see. How often do you change strings? Not enough. I got to change my strings more. I got some strings to change today, actually, because I got a gig. So, but I hate changing strings, man. If I never had to do that ever again, it would be great. But yeah, I'll get to the point where I'm making a video and here recording something like, man, these damn strings are just too dead. I got to change them. Like I'm not doing the pedal justice or the sound justice. Some people like the sound of dead strings. I mean, I heard Eddie would never change them in the studio. He liked it. Eddie was an interesting cat because he had a really bright tone, generally speaking, a lot of the time, but he did do some things to warm it up. I think Alnico 2 pickups and dead strings and things. He kind of liked some, it's all a balancing act. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's see. An 8-ohm load into a 16-ohm speaker will cut the wattage in half. I don't think that that's technically true. That's not really what happens. It changes the impedance curve and stuff, I know. Let me ask one of my amp guru friends here for a little bit of knowledge on that. Let me see. If you run an 8 ohm amp into a 16 ohm speaker, is there an actual loss in power, or is it just changing the impedance curve? See if I can get an answer. He probably hit me back. I don't think it's a loss in power. I think it just changes it definitely sounds brighter and it sounds a little less efficient, a little less headroom, but I don't think it's cutting the power by half or anything. Let's see, G12M 25 versus G12T 75. I'll take the 25 all day long over 75, although there are situations where 75 can sound good. I've tried them sometimes and gone, this cabinet doesn't sound too bad. But I've also tried them and gone, this cabinet sounds bloody awful. And I remember one show I did on the Five for Fighting tour, a fly date, where I had a cabinet. I had a number of technical things on that gig. That was a tough gig, but it was a rented cabinet. And it was 75s, and it sounded crappy, man. It just sounded like, I don't know, the distortion just sounded like really big grain crappy, whereas like if you use a V30, it tends to sound really good. So I'm just wondering if it actually cuts the power, though. If you run an amp set at 8 into a 16 ohm, of course the voice text isn't working. Okay, and he's just getting back to me here. Okay, let's see. Austin says that he's writing riffs and sipping coffee along with the live stream. Fantastic. I like that. I like it. Let's see. This is a pretty basic question. It's a great question, though. Do you have any tips for young musicians going on their first tour? Have backups for everything. So batteries and cables and, fuses. Bring fuses. Bring a backup set of tubes if you're using a tube amp. Plan for disaster. Try and get rest, and do things to make yourself feel healthy. Yeah, don't burn the can on both ends too much and stuff, and get some sleep, especially if you're driving. If you're in a van, you got to be careful. There's a lot of van accidents. That's the stuff I worry about, safety and stuff, mainly with young musicians on tour. Van towing a trailer is a death trap as it is. So you got to make sure you get your sleep, and you're not taking chances with drives and stuff like that. What else? Just that's the main things, I think. Be nice to people, because you're going to see the same people over and over again on your travels and your journeys. Crew people, other bands. Try and be accommodating and helpful and stuff, and that'll come back to you in droves, in spades later. As you move on through the years of working. Yeah. I don't understand, though. Is there an actual output reduction, do you think, if you run an 8 ohm into a 16 ohm speaker, as opposed to an 8 into an 8 ohm cabinet? He's not really giving me an answer. And freaking voice text is, yeah, just a sec. Okay. It changes the primary impedance of the output transformer because it's all tied together. The primary impedance of the upper transformer depends on what you load it with. But I'm not getting he's not telling me if it actually results in a loss of power. I think it results in a loss of headroom, but I don't know about power. What do we got here? An $11.99 super sticker from Thomas. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. Somebody's mentioning DMAX says Katanas take pedals really well. A good drive into a clean channel. That's cool. Yeah, some solid state amps are actually pretty cool with pedals. They can be kind of like good pedal platforms, you know. A lot of people used to use the old JC 120s with pedals, you know, even with those sort of heinous speakers they had in them. You could get some cool sounds out of it. JC 120 is a neat sounding amp, you know, in its own for that really crystal clean thing. Yeah. Johan says, I have a Randall XL cab. I can switch from 8 to 16. I hear little to no difference between 8 and 16. Interesting. You switch from 8 to 16. Most it would be 4 to 16 in a 412. Yeah. I wonder how they're doing that. Let's see. Have you ever played a Rocket Retro amp? Aren't those the solid state ones that Lance Keltner was doing some videos for back in the day? Yeah, I guess he's driving. That's why he's not really giving me a total answer. But let's see. So yeah, I don't have an answer about the wattage, and get back to me on that one. I tried my Buddha at 16 ohms through an 8 ohm cab. 8 ohms sounds much better than 16. Interesting. It's kind of technically not the safe mismatch. Like you're going from 16 ohm amp into an 8 ohm cab. That's that backwards mismatch of the lower impedance cabinet is supposed to be not great for your amp, but maybe it's stressing something in a way that you like, If it sounds good, it's probably okay. Just know that it's probably not the safest thing to do. Changing the primary impedance. That's what John said. I read an interview with Joe Satriani where he said once he started playing his signature amp, he dislikes overdrive and boost pedals. Any thoughts? Well, yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, I did a video on how old school amp distortion is still the best distortion. So you can watch that. Actually, I'll just direct you to that video because it's got examples of why I think that is. But just talking about it, the amp, with a high voltage, tube preamp, and the amount of dynamics and all the harmonics and all that stuff. It's just like when you generate the overdrive in a high voltage tube preamp, it's just got this juicy kick-ass thing to it that like a 9-volt pedal just kind of can't really, solid state. It's just not the same thing. I mean, that's why we love tubes and tubes running at high voltage, like they're designed to run at and stuff. It's just got this sound to it that's magic, cascaded gain stage of even an old Marshall is a cascaded, there's a couple gain stages and they're all a big part of the equation. And to a certain degree, even overdriving the phase inverter tube, the last one, the third tube in an old Marshall, that's got a thing that's really special. I know Brian Gerhard would disagree with me, but it depends on the sound you're trying to get. But he's not crazy about the idea of overdriving phase inverters, but I think that's Eddie Van Halen. So, slamming the hell out of the preamp as well as some power amp, coloration in there. But anyways, it's hard to get that level of dynamics and stuff out of pedals, although they're better now than they used to be for that. The BEOD, the Sir Riot, this pedal, the old Plexitone, I had some hand in voicing this, can get very similar sound, but still the best is the amp distortion and the whole thing kind of, doing its when you get that big high voltage box and you hit it hard and it's pushed to the limit and it's kind of sagging a little bit it's just this magic. It feels good under the fingers. It's like part of the it's an organic part of the tone, whereas instead when you're doing a pedal in front, you got a clean channel on an amp, you're not really doing that, and you're kind of simulating it in this little box going into a clean channel, and it can be cool, but it's just not as overall, I don't know. It's like revving a big engine or something in a powerful car, and then pushing it hard. It's like it's got this horsepower thing to it that when you I just think it's got to do with tubes and voltage and tubes as far as overdrive and stuff goes. They're not an on or off thing. All that, it's like that transition from when it's clean into when it's run out of headroom and when it's clipping and stuff and starting to, clip the peaks and stuff. And then when it gets saturated, and then when you feed a few of those into one another, those stages, there's just magic to it. Those tube stages, and then tuning between each stage with, how you cut highs and lows in between each stage. So that stage feeds into this stage, and they're all doing that magic. What did Dumble call it? The crystal lattice, something like that. It's magical, Thoughts on hand wired versus circuit board? That ship has sailed. I think, like any good amp builder that I know now is pretty much on the, if you do a PC board right, with some hand wiring, it's like even amps that are, old, like, old Marshalls or whatever, they're tag boards, right? With all the caps and everything mounted on the boards. Like, it's not like there's wires running between every single, so different types of amp construction. But the reality is, when I talk to guys that build amps that are, they've built plenty of hand wired or tag board wired amps and everything, and then they've done PC boards too. Sir is a great example. They'll tell you, like, man, it's just so much better doing like a well-designed PC board. You can get the exact same tonal results, but with more consistency and less problems, less places for things to screw up, and it's just a better way to go. So I don't think there's anything to there's a in a simple amp circuit, if you've got a Tweed Deluxe or something, a basic, a Champ, something like that, a simple amp, sure. I mean, it's cool to have the, the whole hand wired thing and all that, I guess. But anytime you get into multiple channels and any kind of switching, and it's a nightmare. You can't really, I mean, people have done it, I think, with hand wired, but it's not, there's going to be more problems, more noise, less consistency. There's a lot of reasons to go with a well-designed PC board. That's what the best amp, Friedman and Sir and these guys that are like super well respected in the world of amp builders all say. They all say that. So, yeah. Have I tried the Mark V from Mesa? Not really, but I did play through one at, I played through one at Michael Thompson's. That was the Mark V, the mini one, the little 25-watt one. It sounded really cool. I like some of those amps. I was a Mesa guy. I mean, back in the day, I had a studio preamp, and I also had a Caliber 50. And then I had a rectifier that I made the 40-foot Echo album with, a 3-channel. I've had, their 2020 power amp. I had a 295 power amp. I've owned a lot of pieces of their gear over the years. I had a Mark III that I did not bond with and got rid of. Didn't like that. Seemed like the Mark IV was better. Seemed like the Mark V was a step up from that, And then there's the whole 2C thing, 2C plus. It's supposed to be this kind of magical, cool one. But I don't have a hell of a lot of experience with the Mark amps, other than that 3 that I had that I didn't bond with, and then a 4 and a 5 I never really, but I did try Michael's, and it sounded good at his studio, and I played a solo through it and recorded it and stuff. However he had it dialed, it sounded pretty cool. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, the serious bands, Alice in Chains, Mother Love Bone, had their own sound person. Getting across with random club sound people is an uphill battle. It sure is. I mean, you can get lucky, but that, once again, like, the sound person's kind of like the equivalent of an impulse response for a guitar sound. It's the final filter on your whole sound, and they can totally screw you, And what can you do? There's nothing you can do, I've done tours where there's been great sound people, and then I've done tours where it's been underwhelming, where, I know what the band is producing sounds great, but when I go out front, I don't feel like it's translating. So I've also done tours where I walk out front and I'm like, I can't believe it sounds this good. It's like, we sound pretty good in my ears or monitors on stage, but man, in the house, it sounds, like it sounds like a friggin' record, just fantastic. So it's the sound person's a a major part of the equation, and I've had to get used to that over the years because, you know, there's been times where it's been amazing, times where I've been frustrated. And, you know, in a club, you never know. It's like you're going to do the show, and afterwards, you know, people are going to say, that was great. Or, you know, maybe it was, and maybe it wasn't. And maybe they didn't care. Maybe they just had a good time. And, you know, it's always wild when you play and you feel like you had an off night and people come up and go, your guitar sounded so good tonight. You played great. And you're like, really? I didn't even feel like I was, you know, all these factors. You just got to let it go. Try and have fun. Oh, Ben says he's got a show tonight with Stuart from Crash Test Dummies. If folks in the States may know that band or may not, it's a Canadian band that had big hits in the 90s and stuff. Right? That song, Once. That was a big hit. Sorry, I can't remember the words right now. Cool song. The guy had a super deep voice. I should do a Crash Test Dummies cover band because I've got a relatively deep voice, and I think I could do that guy's voice. So, anybody want to start a Crash Test Dummies cover band? I'll be the singer. I don't want to play guitar. I just want to sing. Let's see. Please just take my money, says Mr. Dave Vick, and record the clinic, modern production recording for guitar. Well, that has happened, and it's coming. I got to check on when it's coming, but I did it with, I can't tell you more than that, but because I don't want to screw up the release, but I did do it, and I did it earlier this year, and so it'll be soon, and it'll be coming out, and basically teach the clinic in a video. So I thought, you know, for a long time I didn't want to live stream my clinic or do any kind of like when I would go do them, I'd be like, please don't do it on the broadcast this on the internet, because I feel like then what's the point of coming to the clinic? I wanted this to be not about YouTube. I wanted the clinic to be about in person and you know, that kind of event. But after I did it in Asia and Europe and all over the States and stuff, you know, a few in Canada, I thought, well, I've basically done this clinic. So now it's time to put it on a video and send it, you know, do it that way, and then put it to bed, you know. So anyway, more on that soon. It's supposed to be around now that it was happening, so that it was coming out. So I'll find out. Let's see. JJ says that he finds he doesn't use overdrive or boost since he got the PT15, just prefer the amp gain. That's cool. I still use them, even though I've got all the, you know, the PT15. But I like using a Klon style for my lead boost in front of channel 3. I really love that. Occasional fuzzes and other overdrives in front of channel 1. You know, so I'll use like, you know, the Jan Ray or this little guy, the Bell from Wampler. This is similar to a Nobles. I would use that for kind of like a Stonesy light overdrive in front of channel 1. You know, I've got a Ryra fuzz. Sounds great in front of channel 1. So, yeah. So I still like, but you know, all the meat and potatoes is all the amp tones, the overdrive coming from the amp for sure. Wondering how to best position my amp on stage so I can hear it. That's a good question. Do you put yours on a stand, angle it, or you know, I don't. I kind of have my amp far enough away that I can get it. Like, it doesn't really please me to hear it shooting straight into my ear. Like most people, you know, cabinets are beamy and they sound a little bright when you're right in front of them. You get a little off axis, they sound better. Part of why you take a mic and also move it off from the cone a little bit. You know, it sounds a little better, especially live, I find. So I don't personally like being right in the beam, although I guess there's something to be said for on a lower volume stage, if you can angle the speaker right at you, you are going to hear the guitar better at low volume than if it's off axis and darker and a little, you know, so, you know, part of, you know, like a Marshall cabinet or 412 or whatever sounds really good with high gain, especially when you're standing kind of on top of it. So like when it's shooting at your pant legs and you're standing back maybe 2 feet and you're not standing in front of it, be like, oh God, but standing like on top of it, it sounds really cool, you know? So it's just kind of one of those things. So I guess it depends what you're doing. If you're playing a little Fender combo and you're mainly playing clean or something, you can get amp stands to angle I've done everything to angle cabinets a little bit. When I did a tour with Melissa Etheridge, I remember I had a couple of 212s with 2 different heads that I was A-Bing, and I was using a hockey stick, and it was a Canadian tour. How Canadian is that? We found this hockey stick. I thought that's amazing, and I totally want to do it. So we put the hockey stick under the front of the cabinets with then the kind of the end of the hockey stick pointing up at the end, and it was like angling the cabinet. It would lift the cabinets that far off the floor on the front, and just angle them back just a couple degrees, so that I was then getting a little more in my ears. So, and I did it more for the look than anything. But I've also used hockey pucks. I've used hockey pucks to angle up. I've used ashtrays to angle up cabinets. And nobody smokes anymore, but well, some places they do. But in bars, it used to be easy to find a couple of ashtrays to put under the front of your cabinet, and you could angle it back a little bit. So that works. And there's, products out there that people make now to do this stuff as well, to prop your amp back and stuff. Any guests lined up in the near future? You know what? Not right now. I haven't put any effort into that. I'm just gonna be completely honest, and I probably should, but I've just been doing other things since I got back from Europe and stuff, and I've got so many videos to make, man, of different. I mentioned last week I'm starting to make videos for amps, so there's a couple of 3 different amp videos I have to make coming up for different amps, and I'm excited about that. And as well as just a ton of pedals and stuff. So I'm just kind of focused on that as far as YouTube goes. It's a lot to think about everything you got to do every week, and then also booking guests and stuff. So and the way the show has gone, I love having guests occasionally. It's really fun. But the way the show has gone, I love doing this too. Like, I love just it being me and hanging with you guys and just kind of this format. I don't feel any anxiety about it and any kind of like extra pressure every week. Maybe you could call that laziness, but I really like the coming here and making coffee and sitting down and just talking one-on-one with you guys. I know it's cool to have guests, and I should do more of it, and I haven't had one for a while. Kim Mitchell might be my last guest, I think. It was a minute ago for sure. But anyways, I know that with Tone Talk, they have guests all the time. Of course, sometimes they do their Ask Dave shows and stuff, but mainly it's a guest kind of thing. And there's a pressure there to get 3 people together and find a time. And I used to feel it a little bit with the Tim and Pete show too. Tim and I talk about that, like trying to get the 2 of us together with a guest and then edit and everything. It was like, it's adding a layer of complexity. So that's all. So I really enjoy I love that I can do this from an airport or something, and just log on and be like, it feels like a really natural thing that it's not a source of stress at all for me. I love that about it. So yeah. Okay. There's a lot of truth to this. TC says a slight resistance change on any EQ pot will affect the amp more than any cap change. I mean, I kind of think that's true. Like we make these changes to amps, could be the tubes, could be and it all affects, for sure, different caps, subtle differences, different tubes, subtle differences. But by turning the treble from 10 to 0 on an amp, you're going to massively affect the sound of any amp, right? So you've got all these controls there to kind of dial them in. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. Speakers as well, more than any cap. Changing your speaker will be like, oh god, it sounds like totally different now to me. Have I ever met Randall Smith? No, and he's now retired. He sold the company, so I probably never will, I guess. But no, I never did cross paths with him. Yeah. Serenity Now says, I love the Marshall 20-watt SV20H mini plexi. Yeah, I think they did a good job on it too. I have to say, after having played it, it really, if you want the plexi thing and you don't want to pay a ton for an old one and you don't need the volume of an old one, it still gets plenty loud. It's 20 watts. They really capture the vibe well. It's a good amp. John there with a super chat. I have a Thorn Booker 2 arriving this week outside of the higher output. What makes it different than an old style PAF? Well, not really that much. It is an old style PAF. I mean, it's hotter than just about any PAF, at 9K. The 9K thing, I mean, it was the Eddie Van Halen influence of the, asking Seymour to rewind a PAF, and Seymour used the same kind of gauge wire that you would wind a PAF with, but Ed wanted it wound hot. So hot with that gauge wire, filling the coils as full as you could get, it came out about 9K. If you use different gauge wire, you can wind them up to 14K or different, so, but on the coils, you've only got so much space on there to put the turns, right? So I guess that would be, it's just there's more winds. So I love the Thornbucker too. I think it sounds great. It's a real toneful pickup, it's got a sweet top end, and it's still clear, and it does the parallel thing just great. So have you boiled your strings? That was the old Eddie Van Halen trick. He used to boil his strings, evidently thought it helped him stay in tune better. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but yes, I did try it in the 80s. When I found out that he did it, I had to try it. I don't know if it did anything. Yeah. Let's see. What else we got here? Another super chat. There's Edbert. How do you manage ear fatigue when you're preparing sounds over a long period of time? That's a really good question. You just have to be careful with the volume and take breaks. Taking a 45-minute break or something, go get some lunch is a good thing when you're working at volumes all the time. When you're mixing, it's mix engineers, they have to kind of, if you're mixing for hours and hours and hours, you can't do it loud. You have to kind of keep it lower or you'll burn your ears out, and then you can't judge high end accurately. So, it's a thing. Paul's asking about the Line 6 Pod Go. I know you did a vid with it, but is it something you found useful or very effective? It's basically a mini Helix. So I found that I compared it directly, and it's the exact same sound. So if you use, it's great. I don't know why they didn't. I guess they already had a Helix LE or whatever, and maybe the pod name is synonymous with Line 6, and they just wanted to carry on the series. But it's not quite as versatile as the Helix, with the scribble strips or whatever they're called and all that stuff that the Helix has. But the tones are all there, So yeah, it's a good box for sure. There's some good sounds to be had in those Line 6. Either the Helix Stomp, Pod Go, very useful. Do I know what simulclass is on the Mesa Boogie amps? Simulclass was just wasn't that just the different tube types and then switchable wattage? I remember simulclass, you could run 6L6s or run EL34s, and you could run them simultaneously. So I think that was it. I remember some of their amps had both, I had a simulclass 295, I think, power amp, and it was you could run a couple of 6L6s and a couple of EL34s on each side to supposedly get kind of the blended sounds of the different output tube types. I guess that was the thing. Yeah. And of course they always patented all that stuff, so nobody else could do it. Mike says, this is interesting. Mike says, I have 75s in my cabs with my EVH head. The extra mids work great with that amp. 75 watt Celestians, you mean G12T 75s. Interesting thing about those speakers, Ed evidently liked them with his Soldano. So Dave Friedman will attest to that when Ed got a Soldano, there was a Soldano cabinet that he tried at the same time with this, and it had 75s, and he got that cabinet because he liked the tone with it. So there you go. Even he used 75s on some stuff. I think Yngwie was a 75s guy, wasn't he, as well? You say they've got more mids. I guess maybe with single coils that would be a thing with, maybe, well, I don't know. On the subject of Marshalls, any ideas how to get more low mid punch out of an 87X? It's got plenty of upper mid bite, but I'd love to be able to thicken up a bit without it getting too loose. You might try a Sir Coco Boost with the low mid setting switched in, and just kind of, maybe it's more low mid coming out of the guitar. I'm sure there's some stuff you could probably do mod wise. If you had somebody look at the amp, you might try, let me think about tubes. You might try some EL34B Chinese Shugwang tubes, they tended to have more lows. Maybe KT77s you could try. You know, so there's a couple different things you could try. Whether you want to do it in the front end, whether you want to do it, you know, if it's a 1987X, it's got a loop too, right? So you could always try a graphic in the loop, just try and goose up the 250, you know, a little bit in the effect loop and see if that something like an MXR 10 band. There's a whole bunch of ideas. Okay, I'm taking a long time here. I'm missing some super chats, so I need to move down so ask again if you ask something, I miss it. Just take my money and record. Hey, I already said that. I must be that far back. Yeah, the video for the modern production and recording for guitar has been made. This is a clinic that I did where I sort of teach my philosophy on like a little bit about songwriting, a little bit about you know, tracking guitars, EQ, mixing tones, and I put it all in a clinic. And so yeah, so watch out for that. It's coming very soon, any minute now. Let's see. Okay, talking about Ed. We're talking lots about Ed. We got to talk about Ed. Ed passed away 2 years ago this past week. So God bless him, great guy, and I miss him every day. Do I think there's a muff involved in the DOA sound? No. DOA? It's just raw amp, man, I think. It's the Marshall. I mean, there's less drive on Van Halen 2 than, you know, for whatever reason. Maybe it's the guitar. Yeah, Van Halen 2 has a different sound. I think he'd gone to straight up greenbacks then. There was no JBL involved, that kind of thing. Maybe there's in mixing, maybe it was a little bit warmer, but the amp sounds, you know, it sounds like mostly the Strat style guitar, probably with the A2 pickup in it on that album, except I know Light Up the Sky has got to be the Destroyer. It has to be. I just Light Up the Sky, definitely the Destroyer, I think. And there's no whammy bar in it, you know, and on the solo you can hear it's an overdub. So you went to the whammy bar guitar for the solo, but the main body of the guitar part is that. But it could have had any pickup in it. Who knows? You know, by then, that Destroyer. So, but yeah, that is, and Dave Friedman will tell you this. That's his favorite Eddie Van Halen guitar sound. It's Van Halen 2, and I kind of think overall it's mine too. You know, the tone on that record is the rawness, and it's slightly cleaner sounding to me than Van Halen 1, and it's just it sounds like volume and warmth to me. It's definitely warmer sounding than Van Halen 1. Both great sounds, but yeah, really cool. It's just supremely good plexi tone. Let's see. Spiro says the Sirs are plecked right out of the box. Have you ever plecked any other brand of guitar of yours? You know, I don't know. To be honest, you'd have to ask Sir if they pleck everything. I don't know that. I don't actually know if that's true. There might be, you know, some more hand fret stuff going on than you think. I'm not saying there is or there isn't. So no, you know, not trying to open a can of worms or whatever or anything like that. But I just not sure that that's actually true that they pleck everything. Yeah, I think the pleck is basically good, but I think a person can do, at the end of the day, like that's really good at frets can do a better job. That's how I feel about it. And yes, I had one guitar plecked many years ago, 20 years ago when they first came out. I had a guitar done, maybe 18 years ago or something. I had a guitar done, and it worked pretty well on that guitar because that guitar had a problem with it. It had a bent neck. It was a bird's eye Fender custom shop neck that wasn't roasted or anything. It was before the days of that, and it actually had a little twist in it. And because of that, it was on the treble side, I think, buzzing a little. Or was it the bass side? I can't remember, but one side had a little bit of a, you know, this in it, and the other side had a little under in it. You know, the neck was actually twisting, and so the pleck was able to correct that into the frets. But I always thought, well, if this neck keeps twisting, then it's not going to be right. And I ended up selling the guitar. Somebody got it. It was a pretty cool guitar. There's a picture of me and Chris Cornell in Iceland, and he's playing that guitar. We're sitting on a couch, and I've got a Les Paul, and I'm like going like this, and he's playing the Strat with like a scarf around his neck. So if you ever see that picture of us, it was a Ross Halfin pic that he took. That's the guitar that I had plucked. Did you watch the Riot video on biasing Dave's Plexi? You know, I didn't, and I should. I saw it pop up in my thing the other day, and then I just didn't hit play, and then I was on to the next thing, and I forgot. Riot did a video on biasing Dave's amp. I'm not sure why he gave the amp to Riot. I'm not sure about that. I got to ask him about that. Obviously, he could do it, but it was at Riot's for some reason. Yeah. Okay. Pete Thorn, Class A or Class AB tube amps? Well, both things are cool. I mean, I love AC30s, which are sort of supposed to be sort of technically Class A, I guess, right? Or I've heard some people say that's kind of a misnomer with AC30s, but anyway, I tend to prefer AB. I like Marshall power sections. That's what I like. The sound of a good EL34 Marshall power section is great to me. You know, all those other power amps I like too, but you know, a good 50 or 100 watt EL34 diagonal Drake transformer kind of thing. Class AB is kind of what I like for guitar. Yeah, what amp head would you suggest for SRV and Hendrix? I will use my Riot PS100 with it, so wattage doesn't matter. Well, that's kind of two different things. You know, I feel like most of Hendrix, well, maybe not. Most of Hendrix live stuff, you saw the Marshalls, but in the studio, I think he played Fenders a lot. So, you know, Hendrix, I think it was about plugging into an amp and turning up and getting a vibe going. And not, yeah, I don't know how picky he was about, you know, supposedly it was a lot of Fenders in the studio. So, you know, if you know, obviously he used pedals that had a massive effect on the tone. I mean, anytime you lead on a fuzz face or vibe, or it tends to kind of take over the sound a lot. So, you know, I think he kind of used what he used. But even Stevie Ray Vaughan used different amps. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan, to me, the quintessential, it's like which Stevie Ray Vaughan sound, because by, you know, 88 or whatever, he had moved to Marshalls, and, you know, he was using different things. If you watch it's kind of fascinating to watch the Austin City Limits Stevie Ray Vaughan or El Macombo Stevie Ray Vaughan, and listen to his sound on those recordings in the early 80s, and then go to the later 80s, 87, 88, whenever he did Austin City Limits again, and he's got the Marshall up there and stuff, and he's using, you know, he's got more like 4 amps or something on stage, or 3 amps, and some different stuff. I prefer the earlier tone, you know, although it's cool, the later thing. And I think he's using a fuzz face and stuff on, if memory serves correct, he's got a fuzz, and, you know, when he plays Voodoo Child and stuff like that. But I think, right? I might be, I got to go back and watch it again. But I do know that in watching those shows, I really like his early sound. I love the El Macombo sound, that kind of thing. So what he would use, you know, besides the Dumble that you would see him with, which is unattainable basically. But, you know, I think he used a steel string singer sometimes. I can't remember what he had when I saw him in Edmonton, but I know he had, I can't remember if he had the Dumble. I was standing right in front of the stage, but I think he had the El Macombo style rig, which was a super reverb and a vibro verb. Sometimes you'd see a couple vibro verbs. Sometimes you'd see a super and a vibro verb. So of course the vibro verb is 115. And with the, you know, blackface style preamp, right? And super reverb is very similar, but with 4/10. And so that kind of gives you the snap and the tight, you know, it's a big sound, it's a fast sound. And then the 15 is this bigger. The most I ever, like, when I plugged in and thought, oh my God, it sounds like Stevie Ray Vaughan, was a vibro verb. So a friend of mine, Lyle Workman, you guys might know, way back in the 90s, maybe 95 or something. I can remember plugging into Lyle's 115 vibroverb with a 60s Strat and a tube screamer. And it was like, there it is, man. That sounds like, I can't play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but if you could play some licks or whatever, and basically, you know, kind of, you know, get somewhat in the ballpark of the tone, it was like, that was the rig, man. The vibroverb with the you know, an 808 and an old Strat, and was like, there it is. And a super reverb is close too and sounds really great. I did a video at Amps in the Zone on super reverb, and I play Lenny at the beginning, so you can listen to that. You know, your mileage may vary, but you might get, for instance, a super reverb and then run it into the PS100 and you know, drop the volume a little bit and stuff. And I feel like a super reverb with some pedals could probably do some Hendrixy stuff pretty well, you know, and then you'd have it all in a combo. The vibroverb there was a modern kind of version of that amp made by the Cesar Diaz. It was like a Fender Custom Shop thing, and I always kind of wanted one of those. Had a little mod in it that he would do evidently on Stevie's amps, and it just seems like a really cool amp, you know. I don't have anything with a 15 or that sound. It'd be neat to have. But then I get thinking about it, I go, how often are you really going to play with that sound? Why would you, you know, like, what about a super reverb? That seems like more, you know, if you can only have one, you know, probably the super is the one to have, I guess. I digress. That was a lengthy dissertation into a confusing, you know, I wouldn't probably go, if you're saying SRV and Hendrix, I probably wouldn't go Marshall, even though Hendrix is Marshall, you know, unless you get the 4500 head. You know, they made a Hendrix head, the 4500. The PRS came out with one recently, you know, that was kind of supposed to be, this was their Hendrix amp, you know. That was essentially a 4500. So like JTM 45, but with a 100-watt power amp and solid state rectifier, I think. It's kind of a Fender Tweed Bassman front end, you know, with a 100-watt power amp, you know. So it's sort of the vibe. A 45 was, you know, the bridge between Fender and Marshall, really. JTM 45. Have you ever played the L3 by Ernie Ball in HSS configuration? I haven't. I think they make some nice guitars, Ernie Ball. You know, I mean, I played the EVH and the Axis, the Lukather one, and then a few, you know, and I picked them up what do they call them, cutlasses and stuff, and they look really nice. And I think that they make nice guitars and good feeling necks. It's just they're so similar to Sir, and I'm so, you know, I have my own signature with Sir, and so I just stick with my company and stuff. But I think they feel nice. You know, they do the nice, you know, flame necks and stuff that are roasted. And when you pick them up, they feel similar in the way that a Sir has a nice fast oiled feeling, even though it's probably satin, you know, protected neck that's, you know, great fret dressing and everything. Ernie Balls are, you know, they're making some great guitars too, I think. So feel really good. TC says a good turret board amp will hold up better than a printed PCB. You know, I don't actually really think that that's true. If you talk to, you know, Sir, if I could, you know, he's busy right now, but he would tell you why PC is the way that they do. Not all PC boards are created equal. Let's take the early Marshall PC boards. You know, when they first switched, sure, you know, 74, 75 Marshalls, if they've had any mods done to them and stuff. I mean, we were just talking about this the other day. If they've had mods done and stuff, those boards are ready to fall apart, you know, from, you know, any kind of, you know, taking caps on and off and stuff and any kind of heat. And they were just kind of crappy PC boards. But that's not the way that people build boards now, you know. The way that Sir does boards, and, you know, with the way they do their traces and the type of board and how, you know, they're much thicker, but they flex a little. So they, you know, if the amp's taking blows and stuff like that, they're not real rigid and thick. They've got, you know, they think about all this stuff. And so the PC board stuff has come a long, long, long way. And I've just, you know, these guys, the guys that ship hundreds of amps are the ones that I'm going to trust to what's the most reliable, right? Guys that build and ship hundreds of amps. So Friedman's one of those guys. I mean, he's, you know, there's thousands and thousands of amps in the field, and he's a guy that's hand built amps and turret boards and circuit boards and stuff. And, you know, John ships a lot of amps too. And these are the guys that when you talk to them and go, okay, after doing this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, what do you see as far as reliability goes? And they all across the board say a good designed piece, a well-designed PC board with some degree of hand wiring and some stuff, not, it doesn't mean you're going to put the tubes on the board or different, it's different thing. Or maybe you have a separate board for those or different things, but if it's built right, the PC board is the most consistent and reliable. That is what I hear, So, but I do agree with you. If this was 1974 or 5 and we had that discussion, I would say 100% tag board is more reliable because they hadn't gotten PC boards together to that point, and they kind of sucked and they were flimsy and they weren't, a few mods and they were toast, and you basically, yeah. So. Richard says PC board depends on the design. Mass-produced PCB amps can have some serious design flaws. Absolutely, yeah. If they're not done right, then they're not great. But you could say that for hand-wired too. I've looked inside a lot of hand-wired amps. I mean, look at a high watt, right? I posted a picture of a high watt a little while ago on my Insta. I'll find it. I mean, it's just like out of control, the way the wires are. I mean, it's just a beautiful example of that style of amplifier, the way that they, I mean, it's gorgeous, right? And so but you don't see a lot of amps. I've also seen that, hand wired, right? Or, tag boards, and it's just like, it looks like a rat's nest when you get inside, so not everybody's soldering skills are the same. Not everybody's, So anyway, yeah. I mean, I really trust Sir when it comes to this stuff. He's concerned. Reliability does not take a back seat to anything with that guy. He wants it to be quiet and reliable and be problem free. And so when you see the inside of, if you want to, if you have a Sir Ombre, take a look at the chassis. It's a great example of a modern PC board amp that is built. It's a old school, blonde or brown face deluxe, right? Basically that's what the amp's based on. But when you open it up, it's built exactly. It's modern the way that it's built all the way through, but like in the best way, not to save money or not. You can save money, actually. I mean, when you do it that way and you do it right, because it's easier to build, but it's the ultimate culmination of like all the things that, he's learned. And, because believe me, they're made in the factory and out in like Elsinore. If it was better to do it tag board, all hand wire, he would just do it that way. But the way that he did it, it's like, this makes the most sense on reliability, cost to the the person buying the amp, as well as it's faster to build, it's just more consistent. That's the way he thinks. So if there was a better way to do it that sounded better, he would be doing it. He doesn't put any stock in it sounding better, certainly to do tag board or complete hand wiring. And if it was more reliable to do tag board or hand wiring, he would be doing that too, because he's so concerned with reliability. So that's enough about that. Okay, what else? Have I ever listened to Fish? Very little, I don't know much about that band. Trey, the guitarist, started using a Trainwreck Express. That's interesting. I want to hear that. As his dry amp in a stereo rig. I want to hear that. Yeah, an Express is basically like a 30-something watt EL34 rockin' Trainwreck, pretty cool amps. I've played a few of them. Are you a fan of Angle amps? The only Angles I've really used are the Synergy modules that are here. And I became kind of a fan of one of them. One of my favorite Synergy modules is the Savage from Angle. Because it sounds so different than the other amps that I have. It's got a modern, it's a Savage preamp or whatever, and it's got a modern kind of big gnarly sound to it that just has a different kind of distortion character than anything else that I have. It's more akin to the Soldano or something, I guess, that's over there, that big kind of grindy, it's not plexi. It sounds like more modern, but it's not. The PT100 has a fair amount of gain in it, but it's a Marshally voice all the time, which is my main go-to. I love that, but it's neat to have an alternative for certain things. So that the Savage seems to have that thing. Now, like I said, I've never played the I've never played the the actual angle head, but you don't see them a lot in the US. That's the thing, I don't know that I've ever seen one in a store in Los Angeles, an angle. They might have a dealer around here somewhere, but not that I've seen. So, you go to the store in Santa Monica that I'm spacing on right now. That's on 7th. What is it? The True Tone. Thank you, Mind, for finally working. True Tone, or you go to Guitar Center Hollywood, or Sam Ash. I haven't seen an angle amp in there. Maybe they have them now, and I just haven't been in a long time. I certainly haven't set foot in a Sam Ash in a long time. I should go and see what's going on, I guess. But so once again, your best SRV amp and pedals combo. I as far as doing, if I was going to do an SRV cover thing, having thought through the previous poster's question, I would probably get a super reverb and a 808 screamer and a Vox wah, and that would be it. That's what I would do. Yeah. When playing clubs, you sound check usually with an empty house, but later the club fills. True. Sound is almost better sounding when the club is full. Yeah, generally speaking, it's always better sounding with people. It's not so damn echoey and loud, and the sound man's not yelling at you to turn down constantly, because now there's people in there yelling, and they're soaking up a lot of the sound off the stage and all that good stuff. So anyways, yeah. I'm so far back in the chat right now. Oh my God, I gotta go down. I missed a super chat here too, so I gotta move down in the chat. It's Arthur Gonzalez saying, just showing the support for rocking faces off. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. Jumpering channels on the 87X works fine to thicken the bright channel. Oh, that's true too. That's an obvious one. I should have mentioned. Somebody was asking earlier about thickening up the lower mids. Yeah, that's a way you can do it for sure. And you might try, the other thing you might try is, messing with bright caps. So your 1987X probably came with a 4700 PF bright cap on the volume 1, which is a great sound, and I like it. It's my favorite bright cap. But it is, thin when you first turn it up, thin. Then by 4, it's like, okay, now we're sort of getting somewhere. By 5, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then by 6 or 7, it's like, that sounds badass, but it's really loud by that point. So if you go to 100 PF bright cap, you're going to notice a more gradual transition in gain, and it's going to sound a little thicker the whole way through, a little, with just a little sparkle on top. It won't be that aggressive upper mid thing. That aggressive upper mid thing is magic when the volume's on 7, though. So you kind of sacrifice something, but depending on what you're doing, it might be worth it. So these days, I'm kind of liking actually just jumpering and then running the volume 1 on like 2 and running the volume 2 on like 5 or 6. And you're getting all the fat there, and then just bringing in a little bit of the thin on the other volume. And with the jumper, you get a great, like with a Strat or something, it's pretty magical. I will say Dave Friedman mentioned that doing a Y chord or even like a buffered splitter is a great way to go too, because you don't lose the gain. When you jumper, you lose a little gain, and it kind of loads in a weird way and stuff when you do the little jumper cable from, the input to input on an old 4-hole Marshall. If you were to use a buffered splitter, say anything that's buffering, that's got 2 outputs basically, and you can just run into both channels of the amp, you're not going to get that loss in gain. It's going to be maybe a little more tuneful. Are greenbacks tighter in the low end than greenbacks? I would say the 75 is, yeah. I would love to see you try some of the new Fanes. I want to, actually, and I talked to Fryet's got a cabinet that he said he would loan me that I would like to try with those Fanes in it, because he's worked with them, and so I've been meaning to check them out. But yeah, a Creamback 75, long story short, is a fantastic sounding all-around speaker. I really like them, and that's what we use in my PT 212, the horizontal 212 for the, PT 100. And yeah, that's a really good sounding cabinet that would definitely, I would say, has tighter and more lows than a greenback. Yeah. Okay. Nerd Halen's mentioning that the Holy Grail Marshall had done a full year, 250 plus shows between Van Halen 1 and 2. Yeah, true. Yeah, a lot of gigs on the amp. I mean, who knows, transformers, and it could be a different output transformer in the amp between the two albums or something. I know that they blew things a lot, and had, he was, yeah, it's just like that amp, you know. Wow, I'm so far back in the chat. This was like an hour ago we were talking about this. So I'm sorry, guys, but sometimes sometimes this happens. You guys are talking a lot in the chat, which is great. Keep going, but I need to go faster and move down here. Have you changed pickups in your Explorer yet to brighten it up? No, my old black Explorer I haven't. Looking to do the same in mine, thinking something in the 14K range, like a Sur SSH Plus or Bare Knuckle Rebel Yell. Maybe an SSH. The Plus, cool pickup, but hot. The hotter you go, I don't know if it's going to get brighter. You're going to keep pushing down into the mids there with the resonant peak of the pickup. I feel like might work, but if you want brighter, hotter isn't always the way to go. If you want bright and hot, ceramic might be where you're at, like a Super Distortion, I think, or a Duncan Custom for bright and hot. Bare Knuckle Rebel Yell, I have those in my Steve Stevens guitar, the SS2 I have back there. It's a pretty bitchin' sounding pickup, but it's cranking. It's like, it's loud and aggressive and, and cool. It's like that's my hot rod guitar, kind of when I want a hot rod Les Paul that has a ton of output. That guitar is just mean, cool guitar. But yeah, it just depends on the sound you want. I always think of ceramic, and if you watch my Eddie Van Halen pickup video, you'll hear it in there. The ceramic, the Super Distortion, is the one that's got the big bass and the ripping top end. You really got me guitar sound. So for hot and trebly, I always think ceramic. I never liked that sound growing up, and overall I don't either. But now I appreciate it for that certain thing. So it does sound like fat and crunchy and less mids and more top end, more bottom end, just whew. So let's see. Ralph says, just got an Axe 3. What's your go-to to get close to your PT100? That's a good question. Since there's no PT100 model in there, I would say the closest is probably like a Friedman, gain stage in front of a Marshall kind of thing. So like a BE style model would be what you'd want to go with in the 3. Yeah. They're not incredibly dissimilar amps, like a PT100 and a Friedman BE, and they're all kind of Marshall power section, take on the Marshall preamp, different values here and there and stuff, but like, they're in that same similar family of amps. Let's see. Do you have a recommended tube manufacturer that are less prone to be microphonic? I think generally speaking, JJs are why a lot of people stick them in V1, the ECC 83, is because they're not that microphonic, but they also don't sound great to me. There's actually a new tube from PS Vane where they've gone and basically kind of copied the JJ, I think. I think they're all kind of sort of copies of the old Tesla, the sort of short plate Tesla design. And the PS Vane, so they have actually two 12AX7s now. I'm sure some vendors have them. I think probably, I know Tube Amp Doctor has them, I think. But let me see if I can find a page on this tube, because this is something that probably not a lot of people know about. Let's see. Tube Amp Doctor. Unfortunately, it's in German. Switch to English, and let me just see if I can find a link here, and you guys can check this out, because I find it kind of interesting. They've they've got more and more stuff coming all the time. With these PS Vane tubes. It's a Chinese-made tube that's kind of an offshoot of folks that started a factory that used to work at Shuguang, I think, or something. Preamp double triodes. I'll find this tube for you guys. See if I can find it. Oh, the website's a little confusing. I thought I would see them right on the main page here, but I'm not. So yeah, I can't. This is taking too long. Sorry, guys. Well, anyway, go to their website. Go to the Tube Amp Doctor website and look for these new preamp tubes. And you can see anything about a new 12AX7 from them. You'll probably find it. So brands. Oh, there we go. I actually found a PS Vane. Well, you can go there and you can look. Sorry, I just said that. It's taking forever, but I can't seem to navigate the site that well. Yeah. But yeah, that new tube from them is pretty cool. PS Vane made. If you have to send them an email, say a new PS Vane that's similar to a JJ. Because the thing is that I've heard that they're really low microphonics, but they also sound better than the JJ. They got a nice open top end. This is what I've heard. So I might recommend those to try. Haven't personally tried yet, but some people I trust have. Lauren's asking, if I have an SLO module? I think you mean for the Synergy stuff I have back. Yes, I do actually. Yeah, I do have one here. Is this an EV8 Stripe Bumblebee? Yeah, this is just the standard. Yeah. Oh, your pickup was microphonic, you say. That's interesting. Yeah, this one's not. Occasionally, this is the one thing folks ask me about why I went with pickup rings on my guitar. I've had a couple guitars with high output pickups that when they're direct mounted to the wood, as Sir does on most of their guitars, and as this one is, Ed always said, oh, the tone's cool when you screw it right into the wood. I've had a couple that howl, though. So I wonder if your guitar howled or if it was a high-end squeal. If it howled, many times that it's just something to do with the pickup resonating with the body of the guitar, and it's a sort of microphonic, but it's it can be, sometimes mitigated by, I guess could be potting, or maybe you put some foam under the pickup, or different things you can do to try and, it's like a different problem. If you almost never have that problem if you mount it in a ring, I find. So it's one thing I've noticed on some guitars. When using high gain is a whoo through the pickup, that yeah. Jason says, hoping to catch Peter Frampton on tour here in Germany. We love Peter. He's my good friend. I love that guy. Sad to read he has to sit down and perform now. Any plans for a part 2 live stream? I would love to if he has time. I saw him recently at his studio in Nashville. I went and hung out with him. He was so kind, and I got to see his Phoenix Les Paul and everything and hold it. And it was just, he's anybody you talk to in this business, just there's a universal love and admiration and genuine and great feeling towards Peter Frampton. If anybody's met him, he's just a lovely, he's a gentleman, and he's really funny. And yeah, he's got this illness that he's, dealing with, and he's dealing with it like with grace and humility, and in the, it's, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's very rare I've met anybody in this business that has, he feels like family or something. I don't know how else to say it, but when I see him, I feel like that's the way that I feel about him, and there's just a warmth to him where he just makes you feel really good. And he's just so know that he's just a great guy with a beautiful approach to life, and even with challenges and everything that he's facing, he's kind of, I don't know. I just feel like he's like a mentor or something, and like an older family member that I just love and respect. It's the honest way I feel about him. He's just a lovely guy. So try and catch him if you can. For sure. What do I think on this Tone X modeler? I just saw Michael Nielsen's video on it, and hopefully I'll get to make one as well. I thought it was great sounding in Michael's video, so I got to try it. But I mean, at the end of the day, the technology's there to, it's a Kemper's a computer. A quad cortex is a computer. So sure, you can do it in software in a computer, get the levels right, patch it in, run the tones out through the amp, and you're going to be able to capture it just like the same way. So it seems to make sense that they've worked on it and figured out a way to do it. And it seems to sound good. In Michael's video, it seems to sound really close. So, yeah. Okay. What am I doing here? Paging down through the chat a little bit. I should probably go in about 20 minutes. So I'll hang for another 20. I know I was late today. So we'll get out to about, 1:45. I've been an hour and 45 minutes. So I'll hang another 20 or so, and then I'll split, get some stuff done. Wondering how the Thorn Bucker compares to the Asato Bucker in terms of tone and fatness in the bridge. I haven't tried his pickup. He used to use Thorn Bucker, and then there was a couple tweaks made to it. I can't remember if it might be a symmetrical wind, so the coils are wound the same in an Asato Bucker, maybe. There might not be a hell of a lot of difference besides that. Like, I've got a little offset in mine. I'm not 100% sure, though, to be honest. Is his pickup Alnico 4? I wonder. It might be. Let me do a little look in here and see. I think it is, because I know he was using the Thorn Bucker, like I say, for a while. And I'm just going to read the spec on it here, what they say. Yeah, it's Alnico 4. Oh, it's 8.6 and a 50. It's about the output of a Thorn Bucker Plus. A little different, maybe, but so it's so damn close. And I think I think I asked John about it a long time ago, and I think it might be symmetrical wind. So it's probably going to sound a little less single coily and maybe a little more humbucker smooth than my pickup. My pickup's going to have a little more of that, slightly, maybe a bit more of that. Je ne sais quoi. I don't know that a single coil or you know what I mean? Because when you do the offset, that's when you get there's a little bit of single coil like character that comes into the humbucker that I really like. So that open thing, I don't know how else to describe it. But if you want slightly smoother sound or gain sound or something, the Asato Bucker could be for you. So yeah. Okay. Looking here. Use Badger 30 head cab at Guitar Works in Calgary. That's a nice store. Say hi to those guys for me. How would I describe it? I would describe it as it's its own thing. The Badger 30 has a little bit of Marshall going on, but it's cathode bias, so it's a little smoother. And it's real controllable. Great amp with pedals. The way I would use that amp is with the power cranked, and then the drive, which is the kind of a master volume, turn that down to about 8, and then turn the volume up to about 4. And that should be a real nice gig volume. If you need to bring it down a little bit, bring the power down. So if the power goes from 10 to 8, then bring the drive down from 8 to 6.5. So the drive should always be a little lower on a Badger to me than the power. If you go the other way, it's going to start to sound very compressed because you're going to run out of headroom in the power amp. So the power on a Badger amp, that controls the wattage via, I forget what they call it now, power scaling. So you're controlling the B plus, I think, basically the voltage going to the power amp, you can scale. And when you turn that down, you're kind of losing power essentially, but then, the amp's going to clip sooner. And now you've got a master volume feeding essentially out of the preamp into the power amp with that, I think it's called drive. You want to bring that down, because if you leave that up and you're starving the power section of voltage a little bit, now you're going to be hitting that power section and it's running out of headroom earlier. Could be a sound you like, but generally speaking, I find for the most sort of dynamic, punchy sound that still has a nice compression to it or whatever, you want the drive a little lower than the power. So just kind of both those controls go together. And yeah, start with all the tone controls on 5, and then put the volume, the gain or whatever, main volume that's beside the input. Put that on about 4, and try it with some pedals, and then tweak the tones between 4 and 6, and just, you'll see that's kind of what it does. And it's got a nice, with the right, it sounds really good actually with this pedal in front. The plexitone sounds good into it. Or a Riot, really great with a Coco boost, Sir Coco boost, to boost for leads and more distortion. Even a rhythm, you can hit it with the Coco for a rhythm sound, and then maybe stack another pedal for lead if you want. They're cool, man. I mean, I did a lot of I haven't used them in a long time, but I did a lot of gigging with them. I used to use it as a fly amp with Melissa Etheridge, the Badger 30. And I did those Steve Stevens Iridium shows. You can see me play it. Like if you look for Steve Stevens Iridium Hot for Teacher, Steve Stevens Iridium, whatever, just put in my name too, Pete Thorn or whatever. You'll see these gigs we did with Sebastian Bach and a bunch of the songs. And I was playing the Badger 30 on those gigs through a rented 412. And I had a pedal board that I don't even remember. I probably had my L capstan on it and a couple other things. And I had an old school Plexitone, the big one, Carl Martin Plexitone. And it's pretty cool sounding, like in that video, if you go back and listen. It made a good pedal platform, the Badger. Steve used one too. We both played Badgers on that gig. I remember that, with pedals. Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. TF has a new 25-watt Fane combined in a 212 with a greenback. Great match. Fane just slightly sweeter in the treble. Overall, very similar. Cool. I'd like to try one. Glenn says, so one Marshall head on the Van Halen 1 tour. No, he had like 6 or 7 heads that were always, because here's the thing is that they never used to match tubes or anything, and they didn't really bias. So when they blew tubes and had problems, I heard they would just plug them in, new ones, and hope for the best. And then you blow more. Oh, these tubes are terrible. But it was actually just that they weren't biasing. So Jose eventually started matching tubes for them. And maybe even, I don't know if he would go as far as so that you didn't have to bias the amp, but by the actual tube, the readings or whatever, so that you could just pull one set, put another set in, and it basically matched up. But it was Rudy Laren that told Dave Friedman, Ed's Tech back in the day, all the way from the early days through '84. He told Dave that once Jose started matching tubes for them and giving them sets, that they stopped having problems blowing stuff up. But that's why you'll see multiple heads back then, all kind of, and sometimes they would probably daisy chain things to get, another amp on the other side of the stage for Mike or whatever, I'm not sure from tour to tour exactly what they were doing, and there's also a lot of amps that they used. I mean, he didn't always play through that one amp, I think that was his primary amp, but it was like, there was others that he used quite a bit. There was a fellow that had a white head, that like a white Marshall head from '75 or so, that evidently he used to really like, and he would use live a lot too. And I've seen pictures with it, and he offered to let me use it for amps in the zone, but I just kind of lost touch with him. But anyways, he would use a lot of different amps live, I think. And, it's in his hands. I mean, he always had a great sound no matter what. You see that picture of him around the 5150 tour, and he's got, a whole bunch of kind of big logo super lead heads in a rack with his first Bradshaw rig, or second Bradshaw rig, probably. That's pretty cool, you never know what we were hearing from one minute to the next, I guess. But anyways, when's the best place to put an MXR Smart Gain, says Donald? I find right after the guitar, generally speaking, is where I use one of those. In my experience, I have one of those, the Smart Gate, I think you're saying. And generally speaking, I found it right after the guitar is where that pedal, that particular one, would work. So what was the preamp tube used in the V1 position? Is this this is a question from David about preamp tubes. The ECC 83 from JJ I was recommending for low microphonics, but ECC 83 is just another designation for 12AX7. But so yeah, so they tend to, amp manufacturers use the JJ a lot because they have a low microphonics, which means they don't get as many returns or complaints and stuff. But it's not the best sounding tube to me. I mean, it can work in different circuits, but they just have a bit of a blanket over the sound. That's all. Which probably explains the low microphonics. But anyways, it's a 12AX7. You know, it's just another. Now they've got another 12AX7 called the E83CC. If you don't find that confusing, then you're a better man than I. But that particular tube has a really beautiful top end and sounds really great. And, you know, they're also low microphonics. I think they're a little more money. Somebody says that's why Eddie got a Variac. He was burning out tubes. He got the Variac, I think, originally to lower volume. But the reality is actually, well, it didn't make any difference actually in tube life for him. I mean, maybe a little bit. He used to turn down the Variac and then crank the bias on the amp, which you kind of have to do. You do have to turn up the bias if you lower the voltage, but maybe not all the way, you know? So it would depend on the set of tubes that they put in the amp for sure. Some of them would be out of spec for that crank bias and probably just red plate and go crazy. Other ones would be okay, you know, but it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are fighting about stuff in the TC and Scott Brockway are fighting about, well, you're at least having a little debate. Fight one another. Now, ladies, says Mark on the ceiling. You guys are funny. TC says Dave builds mass-produced amps that minimize costs and labor. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not trying to make quality. It's not about minimizing costs and labor. It's about streamlining the process so you can make money and also building in. He doesn't want returns, you know? So believe me, like a major concern is returns. You know, a problem with faulty anything is a killer when you're shipping 500 of anything, right? So you don't want to get then you just lose money like instantly. It's a money pit. So reliability is a major. I would say sure, you want to minimize your costs and labor. You want to streamline the production of the amp and do it in a way, but you need to make it reliable, especially if it's a US made product that's bordering on $4,000, somewhere around there. It's not about making it the cheapest way, you know? That if they want to make it the cheapest way, let's get all the boards done overseas and build them over there and do, you know, there's other ways to do that. No. They're building it, you know, in the States. And not everything, you know, I mean, like, you know, not every, but, you know, Friedman's are, you know, when we're talking about BE 100 or BE Deluxe or these different amps, they're made here, you know, and they're charging a premium for a well-made amplifier. Sure, they want to minimize cost and labor, but reliability is a major factor, major factor. So, all right. My Knees Hurt says, is there a new Billy Idol? There is a great new. Have you guys heard that new tune? What's it called? The single? Something about being locked in a cage. Can't remember the exact name, but I texted Steve straight away after I heard it. I'm like, damn, dude, this is a great song. And the production's really cool. It's a really, really good tune. My favorite Billy Idol I've heard in a long time. So check it out if you haven't seen the video. And Steve's in it. What do I find to be the usual culprit of tuning instability? The nut or the bridge saddles, generally speaking. I've got to hit some super chats here. You guys are too kind. Thanks for the super chats. So I'm paging down. Wow, I'm so far behind. I don't have 400 people online, but it sure feels like I got 500. The questions are coming fast, and I love it. I love all the conversation you guys have. So your solo here kicks. Oh, you solo here kicks ass. No guest needed, in my humble opinion. Videos this week. I've got. Thank you for the super chat, Peter. I really appreciate it. I got a video coming for a. It's a fuzz. I can't tell you more than that because it was script the release, but that's coming in just a couple days. Tuesday, I think. The Ampster from Carl Martin. I got to finish a video for that. Gonna have a couple new amps coming out that I don't know if that's this week. 16. That'll be the following week, kind of Monday, Tuesday of the following week. There's a couple amps coming out, and I got to make videos for amps. Some new, you know, yeah. Sir just got back to me. well, I'm just answering one more question. This is about the wattage when you change the impedance. Let's see. How far is it? He says there is a power drop. So if you're using an 8 ohm amp into a 16 ohm load cabinet, load box, whatever, he's saying there is a power drop, but somebody was saying it goes in half. I don't think it's half. So yeah, that's some videos that are coming this week, amongst other things, man. I mean, I could just sit here and make videos all day and never sleep because there's a lot actually that I've got here to do. So I'm building a Partocaster, says Richard. Have you tried a Vega trim? I have one right here that I haven't put on a guitar yet. Do you guys know this Vega trim? Do you want to see it? I could go get it. I've had it here for a while and I just haven't put it on an instrument yet. So let's take a look at it. On the box it says Mr. Pete Thorn. I feel bad. The guy's really nice. I met him at NAMM this past year and he sent me this. I probably had it for a year and I haven't put it on a guitar yet. And this is just part of the, with everything to do around here, when am I going to, take it to a place and get it put on? I just don't know. And it's in this box. It's slightly difficult to open. So, while I'm doing this, Stephen Douglas says that tune for the KSR preamp pedal was incredible. Thanks, man. Can't wait for the next album. Yeah, I need to budget my time so that I make another record because I really want to do that. Well, this is interesting. I haven't actually broken into this box, and it's like, here it is, this little Vega trim. Wow, the block is interesting. It's like, have you guys seen this thing? It's like, it's very tiny, this bridge. It's diminutive in size. And there's the block and stuff. So I've heard good things about the bridge. I mean, it's supposed to sort of feel like the action of a Floyd Rose, I guess. And it's supposed to have somewhat increased tuning stability over a regular style bridge. I just haven't tried it yet. So I do want to try it. I should get it and put it on a guitar and investigate, see, what it feels like. Trev Wilkinson he's been so good to me, and I feel like really connected with those guys. Him and Kate, they're just like really nice people, and so there's only so many things you can try, but I would like to try that and just try it and see what it's like. I always wondered, you'd see Eddie Van Halen back in the day with the Kramer Pacer with the Rockinger on it, or the different guitars that he had with different bridges. I wonder what he thought of the Rockinger trim. He had a couple of guitars that had that on it, Remember those? That was my first locking tremolo, the Rockinger. God, I'm old. But yeah, before I got a Floyd or a Kahler or anything. And then I think I got a Kahler before a Floyd. I had the Rockinger, the Kahler, and then the Floyd finally on a Kramer that I got. Wish I still had that Kramer. Old Pacer. Did you ever jam with Sammy Hagar? No, but I had a great, my Sammy Hagar meeting was great. I think I've told this story before, but you want to hear my Sammy Hagar story? He was really cool. He was exactly what I wanted him to be. I met him in Austria at a festival that I was playing with Chris Cornell. He was playing with Chickenfoot, so it was Chad on drums, Chad Smith, and Mike Anthony, of course, and Joe Satriani. And we were all hanging out backstage either before or after our set. I can't remember. I got brought into the Jason Sutter knows Chad, so that was our drummer. And so, they were talking, and we all ended up as a band kind of going in the dressing room. It was Mike's birthday, so I remember meeting him, and Sammy was animated and fun. It was cool. Joe was kind of quiet. He was warming up in the back, and I remember he had gloves on too. He was like, I guess he wears gloves a lot when he meets people. But he was sweet and just quiet and doing his thing in the back, So anyways, he goes, so Sammy's like, so you guys play with Chris Cornell? Man, I got a great respect for him. I've always wanted to meet him. I've never met him. I'm like, you want to meet him? I'm like, he's right down the hall. Let's go. He goes, really? Yeah. So I go walking down the hall with Sammy Hagar, and we go down to the dressing room. And I go, dude, you got to just go in there. I go, he'll be so stoked if you just go in, And he's like, man, I can't do that. And he opens the door a little bit of crack, and he looks in, and he goes, oh man, he's sitting there playing guitar with his wife. And, Vicky was sitting there. Chris was warming up like he always did before shows. And he's like, I can't go in there, man. He's like doing this private thing. He was really sweet, you know, he's like really concerned. I'm like, no, dude, just trust me. It's going to be great. Just go in there. And he goes, oh, okay. And he opens the door. And he goes, hey, fuck Cornell, what's going on in here? That's exactly what he said. Like really loud. And Chris just starts busting up laughing because, of course, Sammy Hagar burst into his room, you know. And Chris is cool, so I put him up to it, and he probably knew that. He probably saw me laughing in the hallway. And anyways, so Sammy goes in and hangs out for a few minutes or whatever. We watched their show. They were great. It was really fun, the Chicken Foot show from the side of the stage. And afterwards, I was hanging out again backstage, and Sammy came up to me. He goes, hey, man. He goes, man, thanks for talking me into doing that. Like earlier, he goes, man, if you know, he'd had a problem with doing that, with me doing that, I wouldn't have wanted to be his fucking friend anyway. That's what he said. So that's what I remember. Like he was just like super salt of the earth, just a cool guy. And that's, you know, that's the experience I had with Sammy Hagar. So he was great. Okay, another super chat here. Big fan of the Proco Rat. I saw great Sean Tubbs on that pedal show. Use one too. You know, I always thought it was a pretty cool pedal. Like, it seems like a love it or hate it pedal. It's kind of like a Big Muff in a way, in that it's got that filter on it that's real severe, and it's more of a distortion in kind of a Marshall-y way than a Big Muff, which is a definite brutal fuzz. But I draw this sort of comparison between the Rat and the Big Muff, because I think with the filter and the way you can really shut down the top end with it, there's a similarity there. And I don't, you know, I don't dislike them. I think they're okay, you know. So I've got one here somewhere, a Keeley modded one. So have you ever played through the Jake E. Lee Friedman? You know, I haven't played through it, but I saw Jake play through it, and I listened to him play through it right in front of my face at the Whiskey one night, and it sounded great. You know, I think it's kind of tweaked 800, you know, like you used to use in the day. That's kind of the circuit, you know, gain stage in front of a plexi kind of thing, but tweaked to Jake's liking, as Dave would do. And he runs it real hot and loud, and, you know, and pretty cool. So yeah, it's 2:00. I gotta go soon, you guys, but I'll hang another 5 minutes or so here. I want to make sure I got to all the super chats. I'm sorry if I missed any. Yeah. Oh, Joe says you got a PT15. That's awesome. Thanks for getting one, Joe. Tell us how you like it. And what else we got here? Let's see. Some of you guys are talking about the impedance and frequency dependent. Impedance is frequency dependent. No speaker is 16 ohms across all frequencies. So the answer is yes. Lower output. This is if there's a mismatch, but is not clear by how much or what frequencies. I'll tell you what. I just noticed that when I run an amp 8 ohms into a 16 ohm load, I get maybe a slightly, I think, brighter sound, and I get lower headroom. So that correlates with like less output, I guess. But it's not. John hit me back about this, and he says it's going to depend on the exact voltages and design of the amp of the and the transformer. So it just depends. So John just says it's really best to stick to the design for tone and reliability. And the other direction, I think, going say from 8 to 4 ohms into a 4 ohm cab, it loads the tubes harder. So for reliability, just do an 8 into an 8. You know, your amp will last longer. You won't blow tubes. You're probably not going to like permanently kill anything, but he says something about flyback voltages in the transformer. Increases the chances of creating flyback voltages. So there you go. Suggestion for new video series: Pete Thorn rates your rig. You critiquing viewer submitted setups. Kind of cool. I kind of like that idea, actually. Thanks, T-Top. Pete Thorn rates your rig. So people would like write in and send in a video. I kind of like that, actually. Why don't we do this? It's pretty cool. If I could get video, maybe I'll make an email and people can email me with Dropbox links or something for videos. It sounds kind of fun. If you've got the ability to record like even a decent cell phone video or pedal board, you know, like your own little rig rundown, keep it to like 5 minutes or 4 minutes. Maybe it's like, okay, let's keep it to 5 minutes. And then you show us your rig or whatever. And then I say, that's cool, but you've got a ground loop and the da-da-da-da-da. I kind of like this idea. If I forget, remind me next week because it's a good one. Yeah. All right. Arthur says, last night I was with Phillips and his solo tunes are so creamy. He uses a way huge overdrive for his solos. I want an overdrive, but I have no idea where to start. You came to the right place. You just have to ask us, like, what kind of guitar to use? What kind of pickups do you use? What kind of tone are you looking for? Is it Phil's tone? Copy what he's doing, you know? These days, you know, it's like you could get a JHS, what's it called? The Bonsai, right? And that has every tube screamer ever made in it, plus a Boss OD1. Hard to go wrong with that. You know, it's like a Swiss Army knife overdrive. I love the Rocket Archer. It's a little bit of a fatter single note sound, but that's my favorite overdrive for driving the front of a Marshall-y sound. I just really dig it. You know, Wampler Tumnus, that's a great one. What's my favorite load box? The Sur Reactive Load, really. Have you had a chance to check out the new GGD cab pack? I have not. Haven't checked that out yet. I missed your super chat. Sorry. Sorry. Big fan of Pro. Oh, or did I? No, I didn't, actually. Have I ever had one in my rig? I just have a Keeley one that I don't know if I ever actually used it on a board, but I had it around, maybe used it in the studio a little bit and stuff. And that's really the only Rat. I did a video a while ago on the Rat's Bane from Wampler, which is his take on it. And it was pretty cool. Check out the Rat's Bane video if you get a chance. Let's go till 2:10 and then I'll split. And then I do have to split. Let's see. The Red Rocker. Exactly. Didn't know the Big Muff was a filter. Well, the Big Muff has a control on it. The tone control on a Big Muff is such a, like, you can like go all the way down to like super dark, you know? And I feel like the Rat's the same way with that tone filter on it. It's like you can really cut the top end out, you know? Scott says, and I believe this too, I could never get a guitar sound out of my Rat. Not that, I mean, I like it on guitar, okay. You know, Jeff Beck used to use it like a long time ago. But he loves it for bass. I love them on bass too. Great bass distortion pedal. Totally agree. Really, really, really good. Yeah. You ever use harmonizer pedals? Sure. What's my thoughts on the TC Quintessence? Haven't tried that one. My harmonizer pedal has been the for ages the H9, so Eventide, you know, diatonic harmonizer. I've used it to play harmony guitar parts. I think the beginning of One of These Nights by the Eagles, I used it on that when I played with Dawn, or Witchy Woman, used it on that. I used it on stuff with Kiyoshi Nagabuchi where I had to play harmonies. I even tied an expression pedal to it because sometimes you don't want the same interval, you know, sometimes you want the third or a fifth. And so with an expression pedal, you could change the interval. And so I would be playing a part and then have to hit the expression pedal at just the right time. So the interval changed. So yeah, I've done all that stuff. But yeah, that's the only one I've used. I figure I went straight to the Eventide because they're like the legend as far as pitch change goes, right? So I just always did that. Okay, well, I should probably wind it up here, you guys. Let's see if there's a Bruce Black super chat. Looking forward to your review of the Blackstar Amped 1. I noticed there's a flat voice with a linear response that others say is for preamp pedals. Flat voice with a linear response. I see. So maybe it's to kind of not use the preamp in the Blackstar and just use it as a power amp, maybe? That could be. I'm guessing, because I haven't gotten into it yet, but that could be, you know, that they're basically just allowing you to access the power amp and plug your, you know, your ethos or something into it to power through it, like a preamp style pedal, you know. I mean, hell, you could even load down an amp a real amp, and then used the 100-watt power amp in the Black Star, then set flat as a reamp, solid state reamp. So yo. Okay. Arthur says his favorite tone is Eddie's balanced tone. That's my idea of a perfect tone. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was, PV then. 5150s, I think, probably. Maybe he was still using the Soldano a little bit. Who knows, I wonder if there's any Marshall at all on balance. I don't know. But, full wet, dry, wet at that point with lots of Eventide. Who knows if he mic'd the cabs in the studio or he just did the Eventide at the console. He probably just did it at the console, as far as the recording goes. But I seem to remember having a conversation about that, maybe with Dave or something. And Dave seems to think he mic'd the cabinets. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask somebody again about that, see if anybody knows if there's any difference between, because, Ed started using the H3000 or H949, the other harmonizers early on, but then it kind of crept into the music more and more and more. So by the time we got to balance, there was a lot of harmonizer going on. And then he that was it, after that. The interesting thing about that is that the Ed harmonizer tone, if you just use it a little bit, it's really cool. Like, you don't have to go so far with it. And I feel like he was either all or nothing sort of a lot of times with the harmony. Maybe on the early stuff when he first started using it, it was a little more subtle with the 949. But once we got to H3000, there was a lot of harmonizer going on. The 5150 tone or OU812 or those guitar sounds have a lot of Eventide. But if you use it at like half that much or a quarter that much, you just start to get a little bit of that spread. It kind of doesn't sound like you have it on. It just sounds bigger. It's kind of neat. Eventide, It's not really dissimilar to Stevie Ray Vaughan using the old, I mean, it's different, but Stevie Ray Vaughan using the Dimension in the studio. Stevie Ray Vaughan used a little pitch, little chorusing, essentially, like with the Dimension D, right? A rack version in the studio on Texas Flood, So his guitar has this, that's what I mean, like a subtle use of that type of effect has a really cool, just sort of, it starts to get a little larger than life, and it's not reverb and it's not delay. It's a little pitch, but if you just blend it in a little bit, it's really cool. Yeah, if you haven't tried it, it's easy to try these days with, multi-effects and all the things we have now, or, in the studio. The Eventide H3000 plugin, by the way, it's kind of, I don't ever hear people talk about it. They've got an H3000 suite, a plugin. You can get it and put it on a channel in Logic or, and try it out. Just blend it in a little bit on the micro pitch thing, and it's really cool sounding, just a little. So it's not, when you hear it get wider, but you don't hear an obvious, oh, it's Eventide, it's really neat. Little trick there. Be subtle. Yeah. Somebody's saying that Nuno used a rat to boost his drive channel. See, how would he set it though? Because I always found it had a lot of gain. I mean, a rat. So, who's my favorite guitarist? Who do you think? We've talked about him 800 times during the show, but yeah, Eddie will always be my, to me, he was just, he kind of had it all, Nowadays, I've said this in numerous times, but I think that Michael Landau is probably my favorite guitar player on earth. That Mike is just the closest thing to Hendrix. And I love Jeff Beck, but I actually think Jeff is incredible. He's original. He's amazing. He's a legend. I actually think Mike is sort of similar in a way, but with a wider palette. He's got more to draw from tonally and stuff than even Jeff. Jeff kind of does, I mean, he's amazing, volume, tone changes and stuff, and he does, occasional little pedal things and stuff, but it's sort of he's a little bit more like a lead singer. Like there's that one voice, which is amazing. It's Jeff Beck. Give me a break, Mike is like 10 lead singers. There's all these different voice, effects coming in and out and things, but it's also seamless, that it's like this flow of music coming at you. That could be contrived, I guess, a bunch of different sound changes and stuff. With Mike, it's just like he thinks it comes through the guitar and out instantly through the speakers, and it's a constant. It's like you're inside his brain when you watch him play live on the guitar, unlike anybody I've ever seen. you know, other than maybe when you see somebody in the moment, you know, it's so in the moment. That's the thing about Mike that blows my mind. You know, he's so able to translate what he's hearing through what he wants to do through his hands and the guitar and the effects, and it's all just tools to make it all happen, and it all disappears and just becomes music and sound. You're just like, oh my god, like when you watch him play, it always makes me feel mostly elated and super stoked and excited about the guitar, and like 10% depressed too. Mostly amazing, you know. So that's Mike. And you kind of can't get it off of record. You kind of have to see him play live. Like I can only imagine it was like to probably see Eddie live or Hendrix live, or, you know, but even more so with Mike, it's really important to be there and sitting in front of his cabinet at the Baked Potato or whatever and watch him play. And it's just magic. So, this is interesting. I just lost it, but somebody says, by my reckoning, your live stream will be on Christmas Day, your 250th? Is that right? That's interesting. My 250th will be on Christmas. I've done the math, but that's interesting. Guys, I gotta. It's 2:13. I'm gonna start to wind it up here. I'm gonna split, and I'm going to. Josie says, "How many earrings do you have?" Have you heard this person play guitar? She's like insane on the guitar. Go check out her Instagram. Oh my god, she's one hell of a guitar player. So go look for Josie's Instagram and prepare to be flabbergasted. Like incredible playing. So hi, how are you? We met in Germany at the Guitar Summit recently. Incredible guitar player. There is a future. It's you. I have two. I don't think about them. I put them in 20 years ago and they just hang there now, and they've been there ever since, you know, honestly. That's how it is. Did you see the interview with Wolf about the Wembley show? He said he wasn't sure he could do it. Talks about his conversation with Grohl. Oh, I haven't seen that. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see it. That's great. I got to go watch that. Where, Lauren, is that on like YouTube or something? Or like if you can find the link or something and send me. I'd love to watch that. I'd love to hear, you know, because he sure looked like he had fun, and it was probably a great thing for him to go do. You know, that was the way to do it, right? Like Wolf playing with Josh and Dave and those guys that are, you know, just backing him up like crazy. It just, you know, playing with Josh. I've played with Josh. I've done sessions with Josh, and it's like riding you jump on a fast moving train that is very powerful. He's an incredible drummer to play with. You know, he really is. And it's relentless, and he's right there. And it's like a freight train, you know, he's just, and so that, and Dave and Justin was cool too on it too. You know, it was really neat. That was a great moment. I mean, I was at the show, the second one, and saw that, and the crowd went nuts. You know, I don't know if Van Halen in Europe is as, you know, I don't think they're quite as big of a deal as they would be in Southern California, you know. So if you play some Van Halen in Southern California and that well, and it's Wolf Van Halen doing it, you know, the crowd went off, man. They went crazy. They really loved it. So yeah. Anyways, all right. Let's see here. You guys, I love y'all. Thanks for hanging on my show. And I should split because I'm playing a show tonight. So I'm gonna go and get ready and get my gear loaded up and stuff like that. Go rock out. We're doing a little set of Cornell music at the Whiskey. So headed over there. My friend Paulie Z is singing. He does a great job at it. Toshi Yanagi from the Jimmy Kimmel band is playing guitar as well. He's the other guitar player. And yeah, we're just gonna go and shred some tunes. So it should be a lot of fun. So I'm headed there. And everybody have a great week. And I'll see you real soon. Next time, same place. I'll be here. And I'll think about that Pete Thorn Racer Brig videos. That's a real cool idea, actually. And I'd love to kind of do that and get like some submissions and stuff, and just be like, yeah, that sounds fun. I can see, I'll think about it a little bit and come up with a way to do it that makes sense. Okay, everybody, you're the best as always. I have so much fun doing this, and it's really it's a great outlet for me, and I'm happy that you're all here every week. So I'll see you next time. Take care.